Well, hey, everybody. Getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest. Late, but better late than never, right? Here we go. Episode 165. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 165 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find me on all the socials at Be Our Guest Mike. Twitter's where you can find me mostly, X, whatever it's called this week. I'm also on Instagram as well, and you can find me on Threads. But let's connect. Let's talk. I love talking with our friends. Thank you so much for being a patron of the Be Our Guest podcast. You make all of our shows possible. And man, I love doing the Be Our Guest podcast. I love talking to friends on Mondays. Got to talk to Alex out at Disneyland Resort live this week. That was a thrill for me because I love being out there, and it was fun to be out there virtually speaking with him. Of course, the ladies on Wednesday and Friday this week, we had a good time talking listener questions. And what did we talk about on Friday? Oh, yeah, we were trapped in Toy Story Lands. Hope you enjoy that show coming up here soon. Yeah, we have a good time. And Scotty G, we always have a great time on Sunday nights, and he is the superstar there that comes in when somebody can't make it. And maybe we're going to just do all four of us here soon. I think that's going to have to be how maybe we move forward, because I liked how we did that down at Give Kids the World. Speaking of Give Kids the World, again, one more time, thanks to your support, we got to make all that money for the Wish families. I just can't stop saying thank you, thank you, thank you for your generosity. You guys made a huge difference to those families. And when you can ease their pain, that's amazing. So thank you for that. So what's going on around here? Great weather here in the Midwest. It's turning to fall. It's not so oppressively hot. Today it's about 85 and sunny. Man, you can't complain about that here in Missouri. It's been great football weather. Speaking of football, I don't know if you saw this on my Instagram story. Our Mizzou Tigers 3-0 out there and got to storm the field at Faurot Field, Memorial Stadium in Columbia, Missouri on Saturday. As a Mizzou fan, I don't know if you feel this way, because I know a lot of you guys are fans of teams that win a lot, either pro teams, college teams. Some of you guys are very fortunate you don't have. Now, if you're a Jets fan, like a New York Jets, you're kind of like a Mizzou fan, right? The worst happens often. There are certain franchises that I believe are kind of cursed. The Missouri Tigers, I believe we are semi-cursed. So we have a lot of down times. Bad luck happens to us. We had in my youth, a 5th down play. Colorado beat us because the refs gave them 5 downs. There's only 4 downs in football. Somehow they got a mysterious 5th down, beat us, screwed up our whole season. There was this play with the Huskers where the ball got kicked, like off the back of a guy's foot, went flying, touchdown. We would have beat him otherwise. Totally changed our fortunes for the next decade, I swear. We are a unlucky fan base. Things go against us a lot of times, but every once in a while things go right. And on Saturday, we were tied with Kansas State, a rival. Now, not Kansas. We really don't like the Kansas Jayhawks. I can't stand them. But Kansas State, we're not fans of them either. We're not fans of anybody kind of to the west of us. Anyway, 27-27, 3 seconds left in the game. We're at midfield. We take a 5-yard penalty. I'm watching the clock. It's running down. We're going to get a delay of game. I'm yelling at the coach. We're out of timeouts. What are we doing? We have no timeouts. Do something. 5-yard penalty. So it would have been a 58 or 57-yard field goal, which is a bomb for a college kicker. 56-yard, I guess. 5-yard penalty pushes it back to a 61-yard field goal. What record? SEC record. They've been playing SEC football for like 90 years. Dude nails it. Harrison Mevis, the thicker kicker. I've been there for a few field stormings. I was there when we went to the first SEC championship game for Mizzou when Henry Josie broke loose. We beat Texas A&M and Johnny Manziel. Boom. Paige and I told Paige, we're going when this game's over. Get ready because we were on the hill. We are going on that field. We're going over the wall. You coming with me. I'm grabbing your arm. Just don't lose me because this is going to be chaos. And it was. Boom. We went over that wall. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to go to jail. I didn't care. We ended up at the 50. It was the craziest scene. You see it all the time. There was a Goodyear commercial where they showed the storming. We were there. We were out there. It was a video of it. It was unreal. A second time we stormed the field, I think it was when we beat Arkansas. Mallory got to go with me that time. Third time, this time I got to take my wife. We stormed the field. I took Pam. Much slower storm because we went from the alumni side. We weren't on the student side this time or the hill, but it was glorious nonetheless. Thank you, Harrison Mevis. So that was a good weekend for us. Hopefully we can take on Memphis and have a good showing this week down in we're playing in St. Louis this week, a neutral site game. So MIZZOU. Let's keep this momentum rolling. But hope you're doing well wherever you are, and just glad that you are here and doing well. So I apologize. I know the show's late today. Man, Disney tried to kill me today with the silver release day for Disney Cruise Line and the Disney Treasure, the Disney Cruise Line new ship, the Treasure. So Silver Day as a travel agent is your busiest day. You want a little inside baseball travel agent talk? So if you don't know, when a new itinerary gets released or a new ship or a new set of dates, it goes Pearl can book first, then Platinum, then Gold, then Silver, then General Public, and it gets spread out by days. Well, obviously, there's fewer people in Pearl, more in Platinum, then more in Gold. Silver is almost everybody, and Silver is kind of a pain in the butt because sometimes you got to call things but almost anybody who has sailed at least once is Silver. So that is always your hardest day. On top of that, Walt Disney World, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Walt Disney World and Disney Cruise Line are two separate companies. They're under the Disney umbrella, but they're absolutely two separate companies, so they do not talk to each other. I wish they would. They decided to release a Disney Visa offer and an annual pass offer today at the same time. So I'm trying to apply annual pass offers to guests, Disney Visa offers to guests, book people on the Disney Treasure, move placeholders over to dates. Holy cow. So that's why I am a little bit tardy, and I do apologize for not getting this out before lunch. It's dinner time, but I wanted to get you a podcast out because you guys deserve it. I appreciate your Patreon support so much. I'm never going to leave you hanging when I'm here in St. Louis. So here is the show. I had something I wanted to talk to you about. A couple things. I want to give you an iOS 17 trick that I found last night that I was amazing. I shouldn't say amazing. I was annoying Pam, Mallory, and Paige with in Messenger on my iPhone last night after I upgraded immediately yesterday. By the way, when you upgrade to iOS 17, your phone is going to get smoking hot. It's like a 2.5 gig upgrade. It took me about an hour total to get it done, about 50 minutes. So just when you decide to upgrade to iOS 17, if you haven't already, it's going to take you about 50 minutes. Don't mess with it. Just let it sit. But it is a cool upgrade. There's a cool, like when you put your phone on its side at night, it looks like a kind of like a big Apple Watch. Looks like a kind of like a clock radio. It gives you lots of options. You can do photos, look like an Echo Show. It'll give you like the time, the temperature, your calendar. It's very, very cool. Anyway, we'll get to that in a second. I'm holding that to the end. Let's hit the feedback from last week's show. Last week, I talked about how I was 27 years old and I had 27 sets of eyes on me on September 11th because the show last week was on September 12th, and how you just kind of figure things out. The world throws something at you. You get out of bed on a Tuesday and all of a sudden an hour later, the world's changed and you got to figure out what you're doing. And that's what happened to me on September 11th of 2001. Here's the feedback. Len says, my good buddy out in Maryland, living about 20 minutes from DC, we were all pretty tense in the area on 9/11 after the Pentagon was hit. I got sent home pretty quickly from my work at a company that builds computer equipment for the Department of Defense. My wife works at a very important federal agency in Fort Meade, Maryland, the National Security Agency. There were great concerns that this agency would also be a prime target of attack for that day. I remember being so happy once they released them from work and she was able to return home and not be near that easily targetable 10-story building. Yeah, I can imagine. You just want to be with your loved ones, right? And know that they're with you and safe. And I'm so glad that you are safe. That'd be tense. Dennis, my good friend down in Texas, says, I remember the day of 9/11 pretty well. I was working in an insurance call center at the time. On a normal day, I'd answer anywhere from 70 to 150 calls. My shift started off normal enough, and I took about 7 calls, and the phones just stopped. Normally, there were dozens of calls in the queue, but there were none. I thought it was a systems error at first. Then as coworkers started arriving, the rumors started. A plane had hit one of the towers. I too thought it was a small plane if it happened at all. Such a thing couldn't be possible. Then there was a rumor one of the towers fell over like a domino. We didn't have radios or TVs in the office, so we couldn't turn into any news. All of the internet sites were impossible to connect to due to the high demand. The internet wasn't what it was back then. I finally got real news from ESPN.com of all places. The parents in the office started leaving to get their kids. I stayed behind with a skeleton crew and only had two more calls the rest of the day, and those callers were from Canada and very sympathetic. I remember feeling numb and shocked all day. That's it was. I mean, just like everything was turned upside down. I mean, and the times are so different because you didn't have Twitter, you didn't have the social media, you didn't have the infrastructure that we have here today either. When you think back, Trisha, my good friend up in Wisconsin, I was sitting in high school trigonometry when our teachers wheeled in an AV cart with the old blocky television strapped to it. School basically stopped that day, and I remember the eerie silence and general stillness throughout the school. My parents were both teachers, so I can understand how tough that day was for you because they lived it too. Yeah, it was just you figured it out. I've always said in life, just be honest, and let your heart tell you the right thing to do. And I was honest with my kids. We're going to keep you safe. We're going to be safe. We're in Missouri. That's a good thing for us. I mean, love it or hate it. We're probably not going to be a target. We're not in, New York City. We're not in Washington, D.C. We do have defense because we have Boeing here, the old McDonnell Douglas, but we're safe, and we're going to keep you safe. That was my job. I said, we're going to stay here. We're going to be safe and we're going to continue to be safe. And that's all I could tell you. Can't tell you how it's going to go, but I can tell you we're going to do everything I can to keep you safe. And we did. Trisha, my good friend out in Indiana, says, "Hey, Mike, I'm a little behind, but 2 comments on the school supplies episode. Thank you for bringing it up." I was like you and took soup a lot. And I remember because I lived before all those fancy double wall stainless steel thermoses. I had one that had glass on the inside that would keep my soup hot. Only bad thing, they would break if they got dropped and I would get in so much trouble. Only did it a few times, but I was scared it would happen. Second thought, I too had the infamous graphing calculator, which I held on to for 20 years and gave it to my daughter to use a few years back. It still had my maiden name on it. I still did the trick for her. It still did the trick for her. And she said there were a few things that it wouldn't do, but it got the job done. My son wasn't so easy to please, so we had to get a new one for him. We still have one more that will need it, though. So hopefully with 2 kids, it'll be worth the money. Love the show. Thanks, Trisha. Yeah, those graphic calculators, man, those things, whew, they are a racket. There has to be an app. I'm telling you. Finally, John has the last comment. He says, the talk about the TI graphing calculator totally cracked me up. My daughter just started high school and needed a TI 84 for class. We had that same discussion about why can't it be an app on the iPad? We eventually decided it must be because they don't want someone using the internet to help in getting answers. Maybe, but I bet you it's more Texas Instruments lobbying. It's got to come down to the dinero, I'm guessing. He continues, we were thinking about the anniversary of September 11th this week, too. I remember being at work that day at a long gone search engine. Some folks may remember Lycos.com. Man, I haven't heard that in ages. I remember Lycos. A coworker called us at the office with the initial news that a plane had hit a tower. We all assumed a small plane as well, but quickly learned that so much more was going on. As you mentioned, this was before iPhones, and you could either watch the news or read it online. I don't think streaming the news was a thing yet, but we noticed that the news sites were all having difficulty loading, including ours. Despite the obvious shock everyone was in, we quickly started moving around server resources in order to make sure that our news site would keep up and running. It was the only thing that we could do in the moment to help in any possible way. A tiny thing in the scheme of it, but it helped thousands of people keep up to date with the breaking news of that tragic morning. Yeah, I didn't think about it from the infrastructure point of view, from somebody that was working on the backside, like the backbone of that. So thank you for that, John. And yeah, thank you to all the IT folks who did. I mean, Dennis said he got his news from ESPN.com. They had to probably shift resources from sports just to take the resources to get the news out. I mean, yeah, I never thought about that because the infrastructure wasn't there like it was today. It was such a wild time that we had to literally probably invent ways to get information out within hours because the demand was there, the need was there. People were missing. People were needing to get there to battle the fires in New York City, to get there and search for survivors in the initial hours and days. Such a terrible day. But in those days, we had so many heroes too. And let's not forget the heroes. All right, on to a happier topic I wanted to talk about because I am broadcasting, as always, from the BOGP studios in lovely St. Peters, Missouri. But even in the old studios in lovely Florissant, Missouri, for the first, let's see, 12 years of the show, I've always broadcasted from a basement. And the joke is with podcasters, right? Podcasters come from their mom's basements or something like. There's always a joke, podcasters are kind of fake radio people that always wanted to be radio people, but they're not. And they're just people with a microphone that are coming to you live from their mom's basement. Well, guess what? I'm not in my mom's basement. I'm in my own basement. But I finally have a studio, which I'm very proud of. It's my daughter's old bedroom, but I've repurposed it and I like it and I'm very proud of it. It took me to be 49 years old to get to this point in my life, but I never give up on a dream. And because of your support, we can do these shows and have a good time with this. Anyhow, I want to talk about the general Midwestern thing of basements and the lack of basements when I go certain places in the country, namely Florida. We all go to Walt Disney World. And I know a lot of friends that live down in Florida. My friends Jay and Melissa. I got a lot of friends out in Florida. But the one thing is, I've thought about moving to Florida, and I used to be like hot on this probably 10 years ago. I'm kind of more, I like the seasons, I think. So I'm kind of more falling off on that idea of moving to Florida. And you can visit. I can be down there in 2 hours, and the airline tickets are not super expensive, like to go down there when I want to. So I think I might back off on needing to move there. But here's the thing. I don't know if I'd want to give up a basement. Basements are awesome. And I don't know how you feel about basements, but when I look back at my childhood, sometimes like basements were like love-hate as a kid. Some basements in our neighborhood were like scary. Now we always every house that I went to, friend's house, everybody had a basement. Our basement growing up at my house, my little starter house. Now the one we had before I moved in 6th grade, like my one I like was born in and then until 6th grade, little bitty tiny house under 1,000 square feet. It had like tile on the floor, like linoleum, and it had it's totally a 70s basement, right? It had wood paneling on the walls. It had like an old dingy couch, and it had a couple of like rooms off of it. Like one was my dad's workroom that had a big tool bench, as I recall. One had the washer and the dryer. One was like the laundry room. And then one was just kind of like, I don't even know what that room was. Like it was just junk. But it had like a big kind of living, like main room. But the thing was, I couldn't go in the basement because when I was a kid, and maybe we'll get into this some other episode, but I had asthma severely as a kid and allergies. I had it to the point where I had to go to the pediatrician 2 times a week to get injections for and we'll talk about how I could get into that. I did like go and get injections twice a week, get pulled out of elementary school. When you got your injections, you had to sit there for 20 minutes after you got the injection to see if you had a reaction to the injection. They would look at you, give you the clearance. And it was a whole deal. But the thing is that I'm most allergic to, and I still am to this day, is mold. So when it becomes fall and the leaves fall and they get wet and they sit on the ground, oh my gosh, sometimes I cannot breathe. I have inhalers and stuff. So the fall is a really rough time for me, but it was really rough when I was a kid. There were like 4 or 5 Halloweens that I was in the hospital rather than trick-or-treating with my friends when I was a kid. So yeah, the thing was like my parents basically told me I was allergic to basements because a lot of the basements around us in St. Louis were always like moldy and musty. You would smell it as you went down the stairs, right? It had a basement smell. But I mean, sometimes, right? I was a kid. Like I'd go over to my friend Ryan's across the street. His grandma lived directly across the street from us, and his mom lived like 8 houses down the street. So we'd play in his grandma's basement. His grandma's basement was awesome. Like, it had toys in it. It had all of Ryan's, like, stuffed animals, had all of his, like, it had a slot racing set. It had video games. It was all in the basement of his grandma's house, and it was musty as well. But we'd play down there, and I'd come home and probably sniffle and sneeze and stuff, and my mom would yell at me, but it was worth it. Like, it was like a wonderland. It was awesome. I just made sure we didn't stay down there super long. My grandparents' basement. Now, my mom's parents, so they lived on the next street from us. They're around the block from my house, that same house. They had like the 70s basement, but they had like the linoleum floor in the I just remember in the back corner. I never really spent time down there, but like I wondered what my grandparents were like because I didn't spend a lot of time with this set of grandparents, but I do remember in the back corner of their basement. This must have been something they did in like the late 60s or early 70s because I was born in 73. So maybe like before I was born or right when I was. They had a bar, like, in the back of their basement. This was a super small basement, it was not big, but they had a bar because I remember my grandpa had, like, those neon lights behind the bar, like, on the mounted on the wall, and he even had this globe that you pulled the string and it rotated, and I think it said Schlitz or something like is there a beer named Schlitz or something like that? I just remember it was, like, the coolest thing because I'm not a beer drinker, but it just looked so cool, and he had this other, like it was like a piece of art or something. It was like a picture of a land, I don't know what you call it, like, it looked like a woods or something with some water. And if you pulled the string there, it lit up from behind. It was so cool. But there was like a bar with a couple of like three bar stools around it, and you could go back there. I don't know if there was liquor back there or not. I was a kid. I couldn't go back. I wasn't allowed back there. But it was just like really cool. Like the linoleum and the floor had like sparkles in it. It was so like mid-century because they had those lights, the pole with like three or four lights facing different directions. It was so cool looking back on it. But I mean, it was like that was probably like a club for them, for my grandparents. They were probably super cool and had super cool parties in their basement, but of course, I don't know. I was too young. It probably happened before my time. Now, I will say my other grandparents, the one I was always over at their house, didn't have a basement. That was really weird, right? They had what was called a slab house. It was very unusual. But my grandpa built that house, and the reason he did that was because their house had what was called radiant heat or something. There was heat in the floors. So it was awesome in the wintertime. You could walk around barefoot in their house, and the heat would come up right through the carpet and stuff. And because they had thin carpet, and it was like radiant, I forget, I think it was called radiant heat, but they did not have a basement. My grandpa built like a detached, like three-car garage in the back. So that's where they put all their junk. Now, around here, really you have two in the Midwest where we do things. You have kind of two things. You have a finished basement or you have a unfinished basement. Unfinished basements end up being just a place to store junk. It's where you put all your stuff. It's like it's where you just throw your Christmas tree, you throw all your clothes that you don't need. It becomes like like those places where you take all your stuff. You store it, pods, those kind of things, but it's in your basement. Or one of the reasons we bought this house a few years ago, first thing when I saw this, I was like, I want to buy this house because it had a finished basement that walks out into the backyard. And it's got a living room, it's got a living room space, and it's got this room, it's got a little bedroom, which became my podcast studio. And as soon as I saw it, I knew this was gonna be my podcast studio. As soon as Paige moved out, boom. It's got a little bathroom, but it's got an unfinished area, and that's where my treadmill is and where I work out every morning. And it does have that's where our storage space is for our Christmas tree, our luggage, a bunch of junk that we don't need probably. But it's a nice living area because our house is not very big, but when you add the basement to it, it works. If we didn't have the basement, our house would be extremely small, but the living space makes it work with the basement being finished. But as I look back on basements are like, especially in the Midwest too, we've spent a lot of time in the basement in the spring because of tornadoes. Like every time you get a tornado warning in the spring or the summer, they'll come on the TV, the meteorologist be like, head to the basement. And it's just that's a ritual, like in the spring. So you have stuff in your basement that'll entertain you. Nowadays you have your cell phone, so you can watch TV on your cell phone. But back in the day, you'd make sure you always had a radio with batteries in it so you could continue to listen to. You'd have a weather radio that would just tune into the NOAA weather radio station so you knew if you're going to get smoked or not by the tornado. But it would be safety in your basement. Now, it's just the basement for us is it's part of the house. But for a kid growing up, the basement to me was like a club, because like in our old basement, you went down there to play. And the best part also about a basement in the Midwest is it's kind of like a cave where in the heat of the summer, you go upstairs and your air conditioner might be struggling to keep up. It's like you got to crank down, but it's still 82 upstairs, but your basement, 70. It's nice and cool because it's built into the ground, right? So it's nice and cool. So advantage of basements are pretty good. So here's what I want to ask you. Where you live, do you have basements? And were you, because I'll tell you what, man, to this day, Mallory is kind of scared to go down in the basement. Like when it's dark and at night, she doesn't like coming down here. She was always like this as a kid at our old house. She has a phobia, and so did Paige. They do not like going in basements. And when I was a kid, I didn't like going in the basement. For some reason, I was like scared of the basement. So, did you have like a basement phobia if you had one growing up at your house or a friend's house? But the thing was, too, a basement was kind of also like a club for my friend Ryan and I. Like we'd like to go into the basement and that would be like our club, in the back corner of the basement. We'd build a tent. It was our place where we could be in the house, but also kind of detached from the rest of everybody else. People would be nosing around. We could have our games. We could set up a slot racing set. It was just kind of a neat area. So what are your basement memories like growing up? And did you even have them? Maybe you're from Florida, you never had a basement, maybe you wanted one, or maybe you think it's so foreign. Anyway, here's my last real quick tip. So yesterday, Monday, Apple released iOS 17, the new operating system for iPhones, and it works, I think, for like iPhones 10 and above, I believe, 11 maybe. Anyway, you just download it. It takes, like I said, about 50 minutes to get. But here's a cool trick I want to tell you about. Now, for this to work, you have to take live photos. So you got to make sure that when you take your photos, that you have live photos turned on. So just Google how to turn on live photos. It's real simple. When you go into your pictures, just click real quick. I'll tell you how to do it. Just click on your camera app, and in the upper right hand corner, there's a little button you can push, and it'll say like live or it'll turn off. But make sure you're taking live photos because for this trick to work, you need live photos. Okay, so one of the things you can do once you update to iOS 17, go into your messages app, so your texting app, and just pick whoever you want to text. So I'll pretend like I'm going to text my wife here, or I'll just do a new message so you don't see what we're doing. And how you access your apps now is going to look different. You got a little plus button next to the message field. So you're going to hit this plus button. I know you're probably just listening, but there'll be a plus button there. And there's going to see something that says stickers. So when you go to stickers, hit stickers. And then there's going to be a big plus button under stickers. Hit that plus button, and it's going to take you to a bunch of photos. You can click on all types, live, people, and what it's going to do is give you all these selections you can go to. Now, if you hit live, it's going to take a while to kind of populate. It might even take a few hours. If you hit all types, you'll find you got to kind of hunt around to find your live. It works best with live photos. But this is where you can make stickers that you can drop anywhere into messages. And if you pick live ones, they're animated GIFs. So like I found a live photo of Riley eating an ice cream cone, like a pup cup from Starbucks. So now anytime I want to get ice cream, I'm going to use this little sticker that I made in iOS 17 of Riley eating this pup cup, or this looks like an ice cream cone. And that's going to be my bat signal to the rest of the family that I'm ready to eat ice cream. So all you got to do once you hit the plus under stickers, just click on the photo. It'll say make a sticker, and you'll hit yes, and bam, it'll go right there. And then anytime you want to use that from now on, it's in your tray, and you can drag that up into the message anywhere you want. So if anybody says anything funny, you could do an eye roll. I found a picture of me where I rolled my eyes at something. I don't know why, but it was like a year ago. And so anytime anybody says anything sarcastic, I'm going to use my little eye roll that I use. I don't know why again, but it'll work. So have fun with that. So make your custom stickers, but if you find live photos, they work better. You can make animated GIFs of your dog, of yourself, of your kids, of your parents, whatever you want to do, but have some fun with your iPhone. And here's the thing. I know a lot of you guys use iPhones because 85% of Be Our Guest podcast episodes are listened to and downloaded on iPhones. I can see it in the metadata. So I know a lot of you are on that. Anyway, I got to run because I didn't want to miss a show, and I'm sorry. I'm seriously, I'm so sorry that I'm late today. But like I said, it was just a crazy day, and I didn't want to leave you hanging. Didn't want to be late on the show. I know we have another show coming out tonight, and didn't want to pile everything up. But here we are. Wanted to talk to you about basements. Want to give you that iOS 11 tip or 17 tip, and just wanted to check in. I miss you guys, and I appreciate you guys, and I just hope you're having a great week. So let's make the rest of this week awesome and check back in again next Tuesday. So until then, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.